The wrench slipped from my fingers and clattered against the concrete floor of my garage. Through the thin walls separating our kitchen from my workspace, Helena's voice carried with mathematical precision. "He's twice the man you'll ever be." I froze beneath the hood of Mrs. Patterson's Honda Civic, my hands still gripping the radiator hose I'd been replacing. 23 years of marriage, and my wife had just delivered a calculation that reduced me to half a person. The surgical precision of her words suggested this wasn't spontaneous anger. This was measured assessment. "Vincent understands ambition," Helena continued, her voice rising with the confidence of someone who believed herself unheard. "He doesn't spend his evenings covered in grease, fixing other people's problems for pocket change." Vincent Castellan, her boss at Meridian Marketing, a man whose silver Mercedes I detailed twice in the past year. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd polished the car he used to steal my wife. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and moved closer to the wall. Helena was pacing, her heels clicking against our kitchen tiles in the rhythm I'd learned to recognize as agitation. "Marcus works with his hands," she said, and I could hear the dismissal in her tone. "Vincent works with his mind. There's a difference between surviving and thriving, and I'm tired of just surviving." The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. My wife had weighed my worth against another man's and found me lacking by exactly 50%. The mathematics were clear, even if the methodology remained questionable. I returned to Mrs. Patterson's Honda, but my focus had shifted entirely. The radiator hose could wait. My marriage, apparently, could not. That evening, Helena entered our kitchen wearing the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 3 months earlier. Her makeup was fresh, her perfume expensive, and her smile carried the brightness of someone preparing for an evening that didn't include her husband. "Working late again?" I asked, not looking up from the newspaper I wasn't actually reading. "Client dinner," she replied, checking her reflection in the microwave door. "Vincent's handling the Morrison account personally, and he needs the whole team there." "The whole team?" "The important members." She gathered her purse and keys, movements efficient and practiced. This wasn't the first client dinner, and we both knew it wouldn't be the last. "I'll be home late," she said, pausing at the door. "Don't wait up." After her car pulled from our driveway, I sat in the silence of our kitchen and considered my options. 23 years of marriage had taught me that confrontation rarely produced truth. It only generated better lies. If Helena had calculated my worth at half of Vincent Castellan's, then perhaps it was time to verify her mathematics. I retrieved my laptop and opened a browser window. Vincent Castellan's social media presence painted a picture of success: expensive restaurants, luxury vacations, and a wife who appeared in exactly none of his recent photos. His LinkedIn profile boasted about his leadership at Meridian Marketing, but his Facebook account told a different story, one of a man whose personal life had become surprisingly private over the past 6 months. The timeline aligned perfectly with Helena's increased work hours and decreased interest in our marriage. My phone buzzed with a text message from Helena. "Running later than expected. Don't wait up." The message arrived at 9:47 p.m. According to her location sharing, a feature she'd forgotten to disable, she was currently at the Grand View Hotel, 15 miles from any restaurant that served Meridian Marketing's usual clientele. I closed my laptop and walked to our bedroom window. The Grand View Hotel sat on a hill overlooking the city, its lights visible from our subdivision. Somewhere in that building, my wife was conducting business that had nothing to do with marketing accounts and everything to do with her personal calculations. The next morning, Helena emerged from our bathroom with the careful movements of someone managing a headache. Her client dinner had apparently included substantial alcohol consumption, though she'd shown no signs of intoxication when she'd returned home at 1:30 a.m. "How was dinner?" I asked, handing her a cup of coffee. "Productive," she replied, accepting the cup without meeting my eyes. "Vincent thinks we'll land the Morrison account." "That's good news." Yes, it is. She gathered her work materials with unusual haste, checking her phone repeatedly. When it buzzed with an incoming message, she smiled. A genuine expression I hadn't seen directed at anything in our house for months. Another client dinner tonight? I asked. Strategy session, she corrected. We need to finalize the Morrison proposal. After Helena left for work, I called Patricia Sinclair, the attorney who'd handled the legal aspects of my auto detail business. Patricia had also handled 3 divorces for men in my neighborhood, each one executed with efficiency that suggested extensive experience. Marcus, Patricia said when I arrived at her office that afternoon, what can I do for you? I need to understand my options, I replied. Hypothetically. Hypothetically is my specialty. I explained the situation without mentioning names or specific details. Patricia listened with the neutral expression of someone who'd heard similar stories countless times. Hypothetically, she said when I finished, a man in your position would want to document everything before taking any action. Hypothetically, evidence gathered legally would be admissible in divorce proceedings. Hypothetically, a spouse's adultery could affect asset distribution, especially if marital funds were used to support the affair. And hypothetically, how long would documentation take? Hypothetically, a thorough case could be built in 30 to 60 days, assuming the spouse's behavior follows predictable patterns. I thanked Patricia and returned home with a clear understanding of my timeline. Helena had calculated my worth at half of Vincent Castellan's, but she'd failed to account for one crucial variable. A man with nothing left to lose operates by different mathematics entirely. That evening, Helena announced another client dinner. This time, I was ready. The Grandview Hotel's parking lot provided excellent surveillance opportunities for someone willing to sit in a 2018 Ford pickup truck for 3 hours. I'd positioned myself with clear sight lines to both the main entrance and the side door that led directly to the elevator bank. Helena's BMW arrived at 7:23 p.m., followed 4 minutes later by Vincent Castellan's silver Mercedes. They didn't enter together. Helena waited in her car until Vincent had disappeared inside, then followed with the careful timing of people who'd practiced this routine. I photographed both arrivals with my phone's camera, making sure to capture license plates and timestamps. Patricia had been specific about documentation requirements, dates, times, locations, and photographic evidence whenever possible. They emerged separately as well, Vincent leaving first at 11:15 p.m., Helena following 20 minutes later. Both vehicles departed in different directions, maintaining the illusion of separate meetings that happened to conclude at the same hotel. The pattern repeated itself Tuesday and Thursday of the same week. By Friday, I had 6 separate incidents documented, each one following identical timing and procedures. On Saturday morning, Helena announced her intention to spend the day shopping with her sister Janet. This presented an opportunity I'd been waiting for, unrestricted access to her personal belongings. Helena's home office occupied the spare bedroom we'd once planned to convert into a nursery. Her desk contained the usual collection of work materials, but her laptop proved more interesting. Helena had never been particularly careful about password security, and her tendency to use our anniversary date for everything hadn't changed. Her email account revealed a correspondence history that painted a clear picture of her relationship with Vincent Castellan. The messages began professionally enough, discussions about marketing strategies and client meetings. But over the past 6 months, the tone had shifted dramatically. Last night was incredible, read one message from 3 weeks earlier. I can't stop thinking about what you did to me in that hotel room. Vincent's responses were equally explicit, describing activities that had nothing to do with marketing accounts and everything to do with Helena's newfound appreciation for his superior mathematics. The most recent exchange, dated Friday evening, contained details about their weekend plans. Vincent had rented a cabin at Lake Morrison, the same lake where Helena and I had honeymooned 23 years earlier. The irony was so perfect it felt intentional. I photographed each relevant email with my phone, making sure to capture timestamps and sender information. Patricia would need comprehensive documentation, and Helena's own words would provide the most compelling evidence. Her phone proved even more revealing. Helena had created a separate photo album labeled Work Events, but the images inside had nothing to do with professional activities. Vincent appeared in various states of undress, along with Helena herself, in poses that would have been inappropriate for any marketing presentation. The final photo in the album showed Vincent and Helena in what appeared to be the Grandview Hotel's presidential suite. Helena was wearing the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, but she was removing it for Vincent's benefit rather than mine. I documented everything, then returned Helena's belongings to their original positions. When she returned from her shopping expedition that afternoon, I was in the garage working on Mr. Thompson's transmission, the picture of a husband occupied with his modest, blue-collar concerns. "How was shopping?" I asked when she appeared in the garage doorway. "Productive," she replied, using the same word she'd applied to her client dinners. "Janet and I found some great deals." She held up several shopping bags from stores I knew she hadn't visited. Her credit card statements, which arrived in my email due to an old account setup, would reveal the truth about her Saturday activities soon enough. That evening, Helena announced her intention to spend Sunday at a company retreat. Vincent had apparently organized a team-building exercise at Lake Morrison, designed to strengthen working relationships among key personnel. "Will you be home Sunday night?" I asked. "Probably not until late," she replied. "These retreats can run long, especially when Vincent gets passionate about strategy." I nodded sympathetically, as if I believed Vincent's passion involved marketing rather than my wife's body. Sunday morning, I followed Helena's BMW at a safe distance as she drove toward Lake Morrison. She took the scenic route, adding an extra 20 minutes to the journey, but eventually arrived at a luxury cabin rental that cost more per night than I earned in a week. Vincent's Mercedes was already parked in the driveway. I positioned myself in the woods overlooking the cabin and settled in for a long day of documentation. Through the cabin's large windows, I could observe Helena and Vincent's team-building exercises, which involved significantly more physical contact than any professional relationship required. At 2:30 p.m., they moved their activities to the cabin's outdoor hot tub. Helena wore a bikini I'd never seen before, while Vincent demonstrated his superior physique through various poses clearly designed to impress his audience of one. I photographed everything with my phone's telephoto lens, making sure to capture clear images of both participants. Patricia had emphasized the importance of establishing physical intimacy beyond reasonable doubt, and Helena's team-building exercises provided abundant evidence. By evening, I had documented a full day of activities that bore no resemblance to any corporate retreat in business history. Helena and Vincent had spent 8 hours engaged in behaviors that would have resulted in immediate termination if conducted at any legitimate workplace. I returned home before Helena, giving myself time to review the day's documentation. My phone now contained over 200 photographs spanning 3 weeks of surveillance, along with screenshots of explicit emails and text messages. Patricia had requested 30 days of documentation. I'd provided 21 days of comprehensive evidence that painted a clear picture of Helena's relationship with Vincent Castellan. The mathematics were no longer in dispute. Helena had chosen a man she considered twice my worth, and I had documented that choice with scientific precision. Now it was time to present my own calculations. Patricia Sinclair's law office occupied the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades, but her reputation for handling complex divorces was unquestioned. When I arrived Monday morning with 3 weeks of documentation, she reviewed everything with the methodical attention of someone who understood the value of thorough preparation. "This is comprehensive," she said, scrolling through the photographs on my phone. "Your wife and her supervisor have been remarkably careless about their operational security." "They think I'm too stupid to notice," I replied. "Helena's always considered me intellectually inferior." "That assumption will work in our favor. Patricia said, making notes on a legal pad. The hotel receipts show Vincent used company credit cards for personal expenses. That's a potential ethics violation with his employer, but more importantly for our purposes, it demonstrates the ongoing nature of their relationship. She paused at one of the cabin photographs, studying Helena and Vincent's hot tub activities with professional detachment. The Lake Morrison documentation is particularly valuable, she continued. Your wife told you she was attending a company retreat, but these images clearly show a romantic weekend between two people. That's not just adultery, it's fraud. What are my options? Several, Patricia replied, setting down my phone. We can file for divorce based on adultery, which affects asset distribution in your favor. We can also pursue alienation of affection against Vincent personally, since he knowingly interfered with your marriage. How long will the process take? If we file today, your wife will be served at her workplace within 48 hours. The psychological impact of public service often encourages rapid settlement negotiations. I considered the implications. Helena valued her professional reputation above almost everything else. Being served with divorce papers at Meridian Marketing would humiliate her in front of colleagues who already suspected her relationship with Vincent. File today, I said. Patricia nodded and began preparing the paperwork. I'll need you to sign several documents and we'll need to discuss your objectives for asset distribution. I want the house, I said. Helena can have her superior man, but she can't have the home I've spent 20 years maintaining. That's reasonable, especially given the adultery evidence, Patricia replied. What about your business? That stays with me entirely. Helena never contributed to the auto detail shop, and she's made it clear she considers it beneath her standards. Alimony? None. Helena makes more money than I do, and she's demonstrated her ability to find alternative sources of financial support. Patricia smiled grimly. I like clients who understand their own worth. The paperwork took 2 hours to complete. By noon, Helena's fate was sealed in legal documents that would reshape both our futures. Patricia's process server would deliver the papers to Helena's office Tuesday morning, ensuring maximum professional embarrassment. One more thing, Patricia said as I prepared to leave. Don't change your behavior at home. Act normally until after she's been served. Any unusual conduct could be interpreted as harassment or intimidation. I returned home and spent the afternoon working on Mrs. Chen's brake system, losing myself in the familiar rhythms of mechanical repair. Helena arrived home at her usual time, carrying takeout from the Italian restaurant where she and Vincent had shared several documented dinners. How was work? I asked, accepting the container of pasta she offered. Busy, she replied. Vincent's pushing hard to finalize the Morrison account. He seems very dedicated to his work. Vincent's a perfectionist, Helena said, and I could hear the admiration in her voice. He doesn't settle for mediocrity. We ate dinner in relative silence, Helena checking her phone repeatedly for messages that made her smile. I wondered if Vincent was texting her about their next team-building exercise, or perhaps planning another strategy session at the Grandview Hotel. Working late tomorrow? I asked. Probably, Helena replied. Vincent wants to review the Morrison proposal one more time before we submit it. He's very thorough. That's why he's successful, she said, as if success could only be measured by Vincent's standards. After dinner, Helena retreated to her home office to work on materials for the following day's activities. I could hear her typing with unusual enthusiasm, preparing for what would likely be her final day as Vincent Castellan's employee. Tuesday morning proceeded normally. Helena left for work at her usual time, wearing a navy blue suit that projected professional competence. She had no way of knowing that Patricia's process server was already waiting in Meridian Marketing's lobby, armed with documents that would destroy her carefully constructed image. At 10:30 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text message from Patricia. Package delivered successfully. Recipient was in conference room with entire marketing team. Very public reception. I set down my phone and returned to Mr. Rodriguez's oil change, but my concentration was elsewhere. Somewhere across town, Helena was reading legal documents that detailed her adultery with scientific precision, while her colleagues absorbed the implications of her relationship with their supervisor. My phone rang at 11:15 a.m. Helena's number appeared on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 11:18, then 11:22, then 11:25. Each call went unanswered. The voicemails began arriving shortly afterward. "Marcus, call me immediately," said the first message. "There's been a mistake." "Marcus, this is insane," said the second. "We need to talk about this rationally." "Marcus, answer your phone," said the third. "I can explain everything." By noon, she'd left 8 voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. The final message arrived at 12:47 p.m. "Marcus, please. Vincent says his lawyer can make this go away, but I need you to call me back." I deleted all 8 messages without responding. Helena had spent 6 months calculating my worth against Vincent Castellan's superior qualities. Now she could discover whether his mathematical advantages extended to legal crisis management. At 3:30 p.m., Helena's BMW pulled into our driveway with unusual speed. She burst through the kitchen door carrying the divorce papers, her professional composure replaced by something approaching panic. "Marcus, we need to talk," she said, finding me in the garage beneath the hood of Mrs. Patterson's Honda. I looked up from the engine compartment, wrench in hand, and met her eyes for the first time in months. "About what?" I asked. "About this," she said, waving the legal documents. "About us. About fixing this mistake." I set down my wrench and wiped my hands on a shop rag, taking my time with the cleaning process. "You said Vincent was twice the man I'd ever be," I replied finally. "Then you should be with him." Helena's face went through several color changes as my words registered. She'd expected anger, accusations, perhaps even violence. She hadn't expected calm acceptance of her own mathematical assessment. "That's not what I meant," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "What did you mean?" She set the divorce papers on my workbench and moved closer, employing the same persuasive techniques I'd watched her use on potential clients. Helena had always been skilled at manipulation, but her current situation required more than professional charm. "I meant that Vincent challenges me intellectually," she said. "He pushes me to be better than I am. That doesn't mean I don't love you." "Love," I repeated, testing the word like a foreign language. "Is that what you call spending 3 nights a week at the Grandview Hotel?" Helena's composure cracked slightly. "How did you know about the hotel, the Lake Morrison cabin, the company credit card receipts?" I picked up the legal documents and flipped through them. "Patricia's very thorough. She documented everything." "You had me followed?" "I had you observed," I corrected. "There's a difference between investigation and stalking, though I understand the distinction might be unclear to someone who's been conducting clandestine meetings for 6 months. Helena sank onto the folding chair I kept in the garage for customers who wanted to watch their repairs. Her navy blue suit was wrinkled from her hasty drive home, and her makeup showed signs of stress-related deterioration. "Vincent says his attorney can challenge the evidence," she said. "He says private investigators need special licenses for surveillance." "I'm not a private investigator," I replied. "I'm a husband who noticed his wife's behavior patterns and decided to document them. Completely legal, according to Patricia." "Patricia Sinclair is a small-town lawyer," Helena said, desperation creeping into her voice. "Vincent's attorney works for a major firm in the city. He handles corporate law." "Corporate law won't help Vincent with adultery charges," I said, "especially when his company discovers he's been using business accounts to finance his personal activities." Helena's eyes widened. "You wouldn't." "I wouldn't need to," I replied. "Divorce proceedings are public record. When Meridian Marketing's board reviews the evidence, they'll reach their own conclusions about Vincent's expense account management." She stood up abruptly, pacing the small confines of my garage like a trapped animal. "Marcus, please. We can work this out. Marriage counseling, therapy, whatever you want. What I want, I said, is for you to be with the man who's twice what I'll ever be. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. I never asked for divorce. You asked for Vincent Castellan. Divorce is just the legal mechanism that makes it possible. Helena stopped pacing and faced me directly. What will it take to make this go away? Nothing, I replied, because it's not going away. You made a choice, Helena. You chose Vincent over me, luxury hotels over our home, corporate success over blue-collar stability. Now you get to live with that choice. What about our history? 23 years of marriage? 23 years that you decided were worth less than 6 months with your supervisor. Helena's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Vincent's name appeared on the screen, and she answered immediately. Vincent, he won't listen, she said, walking toward the kitchen for privacy. I could hear fragments of their conversation through the thin walls. Vincent's voice offering reassurances about legal strategies and damage control. He was promising to protect Helena from the consequences of their relationship, using the same confident tone I'd heard him employ at company events. But Vincent Castellan was about to discover that some problems couldn't be solved with corporate resources and superior intellect. Helena returned to the garage 20 minutes later, her phone call apparently concluded. Vincent's attorney says we can challenge the divorce on procedural grounds, she announced. He thinks Patricia made mistakes in the filing process. Vincent's attorney is welcome to try, I replied. Patricia's been handling divorces for 15 years. She's very careful about procedural requirements. Vincent also says he can transfer to the company's Chicago office, Helena continued. We could start over somewhere new, away from all this drama. We? Vincent and I, she clarified, then caught herself. I mean, if this divorce proceeds, Vincent's offered to help me relocate. How generous of him. Vincent takes care of the people he cares about. Like his wife? I asked. Helena's expression shifted. What about his wife? Margaret Castellan, I said, enjoying the moment. Married to Vincent for 19 years, interesting woman according to her social media profiles. Very active in charity work, particularly organizations that support women going through difficult transitions. Vincent's marriage is complicated, Helena said weakly. Most marriages are, I agreed. Margaret seems to be handling the complications well, though. Patricia had a very productive conversation with her yesterday afternoon. Helena sat down heavily on the folding chair. You contacted Vincent's wife? Patricia contacted Margaret's attorney, I corrected. Professional courtesy, since Margaret will likely be filing for divorce as well. Apparently, Vincent's expense account activities violate several provisions of their prenuptial agreement. Vincent has a prenuptial agreement? A very comprehensive one, according to Margaret's lawyer. Vincent's adultery triggers penalty clauses that could cost him most of his assets, including his stake in Meridian Marketing. Helena stared at me as if I'd revealed classified information. Vincent never mentioned a prenuptial agreement. Vincent apparently neglected to mention several things, I replied. Like the fact that Margaret controls the family's primary residence, investment accounts, and vacation properties. Vincent's been living well above his actual means. That's impossible. Vincent drives a Mercedes, wears expensive suits. Company car, company credit card, company expense account, I interrupted. All of which will disappear when Meridian Marketing terminates his employment for ethics violations. Helena's phone buzzed again. This time she stared at the screen without answering. Vincent? I asked. Margaret, Helena whispered. The phone continued buzzing until the call went to voicemail. Helena made no move to check the message. Margaret probably wants to compare notes, I suggested. Women in similar situations often find it helpful to share information. Helena looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, a combination of fear, recognition, and grudging respect. You planned all of this, she said. I documented your choices and prepared for their logical consequences, I replied. You calculated Vincent's worth at twice mine. I simply verified your mathematics. And what did you find? I picked up my wrench and returned to Mrs. Patterson's Honda, my hands steady as I tightened the final bolt on her radiator hose. I found that half a man was more than enough to take down both of you. 3 weeks later, the mathematics had resolved themselves with brutal clarity. Vincent Castellan's termination from Meridian Marketing became effective on a Wednesday morning, following an emergency board meeting that reviewed his expense account irregularities. Margaret Castellan's divorce attorney had provided the company with detailed documentation of Vincent's misuse of corporate resources, including hotel bills, restaurant charges, and cabin rentals that bore no relationship to legitimate business activities. Helena's employment status became collateral damage in Vincent's downfall. The marketing department couldn't maintain someone who'd been intimately involved with their former supervisor's ethics violations, particularly when those violations were detailed in public divorce filings. I learned these developments through Patricia, who maintained professional relationships with several attorneys in the city. The legal community was small enough that information traveled quickly, especially when it involved high-profile cases like the Castellan divorce. Helena had moved out of our house the previous Friday, taking only her personal belongings and leaving behind everything we'd accumulated during 23 years of marriage. She'd found a studio apartment across town, paid for with savings from her Meridian Marketing salary, savings that would need to last considerably longer than she'd originally planned. Vincent, meanwhile, had discovered that Margaret's prenuptial agreement was even more comprehensive than his own attorney had realized. In addition to losing his stake in Meridian Marketing, Vincent faced the prospect of paying substantial penalties for violating the fidelity clauses in their marriage contract. The luxury cabin at Lake Morrison, it turned out, belonged to Margaret's family trust. Vincent's romantic weekend with Helena had been conducted on property that his wife controlled entirely. On Thursday evening, I was replacing the brake pads on Mr. Thompson's pickup truck when Helena appeared in my garage doorway. She looked different, smaller somehow, as if the past month had physically diminished her. Her expensive clothes had been replaced by jeans and a sweater that belonged to no particular brand. "Hello, Marcus," she said. I looked up from the brake assembly. "Helena. Can we talk?" "We're talking now." She entered the garage and sat on the folding chair, the same position she'd occupied during our last conversation. But her posture had changed. The confident bearing of a successful marketing executive had been replaced by the uncertain movements of someone whose world had collapsed. "Vincent and I broke up," she said. "I heard." "You heard?" "Small town," I replied. "People talk." Helena nodded, accepting this explanation. Vincent said he needed to focus on his legal situation. He couldn't handle the complications of our relationship on top of everything else. Practical decision. He also said that Margaret's attorney was using our relationship to maximize her divorce settlement. Every day we stayed together cost him more money. I continued working on Mr. Thompson's brakes, letting Helena talk without interruption. "I lost my job," she continued. "Meridian Marketing said my position was eliminated due to restructuring, but we both know the real reason." "What will you do now?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I've been applying for positions with other marketing firms, but word travels fast in this industry. Vincent's scandal has made me unemployable at any major company." "There are other industries." "Not for someone with my background," Helena said. "Marketing is all I know, and I can't get hired anywhere that matters." She paused, watching me work with the methodical attention of someone who had nothing else to occupy her time. "I made a mistake, Marcus," she said finally. "You made a choice. I chose wrong." I set down my wrench and faced her directly. "You chose what you wanted. Vincent represented everything you thought was missing from your life. Ambition, luxury, intellectual stimulation. You got exactly what you asked for." "I got nothing," Helena replied. "Vincent abandoned me the moment his situation became complicated. He never cared about me personally. I was just another expense account item. And now you understand the difference between surviving and thriving. Helena's eyes filled with moisture, but she maintained her composure. I understand that I threw away something real for something imaginary. 23 years of marriage. 23 years of marriage to a man who actually cared about me, she corrected. Vincent never cared about anyone except himself. I returned to Mr. Thompson's brake assembly, tightening bolts with practiced efficiency. Marcus, Helena said, I know I have no right to ask this, but you want to come home. I want to try again. I want to rebuild what we had. I finished the brake work and lowered Mr. Thompson's truck from the lift. The repair was complete, another problem solved through patience and proper tools. What we had, I said, was a marriage between two people who respected each other. You decided I wasn't worthy of respect, Helena. You measured my worth against Vincent's and found me lacking by exactly 50%. I was wrong. You were accurate, I replied. Vincent was twice the man I am in every way you considered important: ambition, income, social status, professional success. Your calculations were mathematically correct. Then why did he abandon me when things got difficult? Because Vincent's superiority was conditional, I explained. He was twice the man I am as long as the conditions remained favorable. When Margaret's attorney challenged those conditions, Vincent's mathematics changed dramatically. Helena stood up from the folding chair, her movement slow and deliberate. What about your mathematics? She asked. Have those changed? I considered her question while cleaning my tools and returning them to their proper places. Helena waited patiently, perhaps recognizing that rushing my response would be counterproductive. My mathematics never changed, I said finally. I'm still the same man who works with his hands, fixes other people's problems for modest compensation, and values stability over ambition. Vincent's downfall didn't make me superior, it just revealed what I was worth all along. And what are you worth? I turned off the garage lights and walked toward the kitchen door, Helena following behind me. I'm worth exactly what I've always been worth, I replied. The question is whether you can do the mathematics correctly this time. Helena stopped at the threshold between my garage and kitchen, understanding that crossing it would require an invitation I wasn't prepared to offer. Marcus, she said, I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I'm asking for one anyway. I paused with my hand on the door handle, looking back at the woman who'd shared 23 years of my life before deciding I wasn't enough. You said Vincent was twice the man I'd ever be, I replied. Then you should be with him. Vincent's gone. Then you should find someone else who meets your standards. My standards were wrong. Your standards were honest, I corrected. You wanted more than I could provide, and you found someone who offered it. The fact that his offer was fraudulent doesn't change your original assessment. Helena's phone buzzed with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen, then declined the call without answering. Who was that? I asked. Margaret Castellan, Helena replied. She's been calling me for weeks. About what? She wants to meet. She says we should compare notes about Vincent's behavior patterns. Sounds productive. Marcus, please. I don't want to compare notes with Vincent's wife. I want to rebuild my marriage with my husband. I opened the kitchen door and stepped inside, leaving Helena on the threshold. Your husband filed for divorce 6 weeks ago, I said. That marriage is over. What you're asking for is a new relationship with a man who's seen exactly how much you value him. I value you more than I realized. You value me more than Vincent turned out to be worth, I corrected. That's not the same thing. Helena remained in the doorway, neither entering nor leaving. What would it take? She asked. What would I need to do to earn another chance? I considered her question while pouring myself a glass of water from the kitchen sink. Helena waited silently, perhaps understanding that desperation would only reinforce my position. Nothing, I said finally. Nothing? There's nothing you can do, Helena. You made a choice based on your values and priorities. Those values and priorities haven't changed, only your options have changed. My values have changed. Your circumstances have changed, I corrected. Vincent's no longer available, so you're reconsidering alternatives you previously rejected. That's not growth. That's desperation. Helena's phone buzzed again. This time she answered. "Hello, Margaret," she said, her voice resigned. I could hear Margaret Castellan's voice through the phone speaker, confident, articulate, and completely in control of her situation. "Helena, I've been trying to reach you," Margaret said. "I think we should meet for coffee tomorrow. There are some things about Vincent you need to understand." "What kind of things?" "The kind of things that might help you avoid making the same mistakes I made 19 years ago." Helena looked at me through the kitchen window, her expression a mixture of hope and desperation. "I'll call you back," she told Margaret, ending the conversation. "Margaret seems helpful," I observed. "Margaret wants to warn me about Vincent's pattern of behavior with other women." "Other women?" "Apparently, I wasn't Vincent's first affair," Helena said. "Margaret has documentation going back 12 years. Vincent's been conducting relationships with employees, clients, and business associates throughout their marriage." "And Margaret stayed with him?" "Margaret stayed for the prenuptial agreement penalties," Helena replied. "She's been collecting evidence for over a decade, waiting for the right moment to file for divorce. Vincent's relationship with me provided the final documentation she needed." I set down my water glass and studied Helena's face through the window glass that separated us. "So you were never special," I said. "You were just the most recent entry in a pattern that's been ongoing for 12 years. That's what Margaret wants to explain to me. Are you going to meet with her?" Helena considered the question, her phone still clutched in her hand. "I don't know," she said finally. "Part of me wants to understand how Vincent manipulated me so completely, but another part of me just wants to move forward. Moving forward requires understanding where you've been." "Where have I been, Marcus?" I walked to the kitchen door and looked directly at Helena, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time in months. "You've been with a man who was exactly what you wanted him to be," I said. "Ambitious, successful, intellectually stimulating, and completely superior to your blue-collar husband. The fact that he was also manipulative, dishonest, and ultimately worthless doesn't change what attracted you to him in the first place." "I was attracted to an illusion." "You were attracted to qualities I don't possess and never will possess," I replied. Vincent's deception was about his circumstances, not his personality. He really was more ambitious than me, more professionally successful, more intellectually aggressive. Those qualities were real, Helena. They just came with costs you didn't anticipate. Helena stepped back from the kitchen door, understanding that our conversation was approaching its conclusion. "So there's no possibility of reconciliation?" she asked. "There's no possibility of returning to something that was never as valuable as you thought it was," I replied. "What if I've learned to value different things?" "Then you should find someone who embodies those different things. What if what I've learned to value is loyalty, honesty, and genuine care? Then you should find someone who can provide those qualities without feeling like a consolation prize." Helena's shoulders sagged as my words registered. She'd been hoping for forgiveness, reconciliation, and a chance to rebuild what she'd destroyed. Instead, she'd received clarity about why rebuilding was impossible. "I'm going to meet with Margaret tomorrow," she said finally. "That sounds like a good decision." "Will you be here when I get back?" "I live here," I replied. "You don't." Helena nodded, accepting the finality of my statement. She walked toward her car, moving with the careful steps of someone whose world had become uncertain. "Marcus," she called from the driveway. "Yes?" "For what it's worth, you were twice the man Vincent ever was. I just couldn't see it until it was too late." I watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing around the corner of our subdivision. Helena had finally corrected her mathematics. but the calculation had come 6 months too late to matter. Inside the kitchen, I poured another glass of water and considered the events of the past 2 months. Helena had chosen Vincent Castellan based on qualities she valued: ambition, success, intellectual superiority. Vincent had chosen Helena based on availability and convenience. Margaret Castellan had chosen patience and strategic planning. I had chosen honesty about what each relationship was actually worth. My phone buzzed with a text message from Patricia. Divorce finalized today. House and business are yours. Helena gets her personal belongings and half the savings account. Clean resolution. I deleted the message and returned to my garage, where Mrs. Patterson's Honda waited for its final inspection. Tomorrow, she would pick up her car, pay for the repairs, and drive away satisfied with work completed properly and honestly. Some mathematics, I reflected, were more reliable than others. The garage door was still open, and I could see the lights of our subdivision spreading across the valley below. 23 years of marriage had ended with the precision of a mathematical proof, each step following logically from the previous one. Helena had calculated my worth at half of Vincent Castellan's value. Vincent had calculated Helena's worth as convenient and disposable. Margaret Castellan had calculated her patience as more valuable than her pride. I had calculated that half a man was exactly enough to take down two people who thought they were twice as smart as everyone else. The mathematics were finally balanced.